Well, let's talk football, guys. What a difference a week makes, right? We were right here exactly 7 days ago talking about OU's win over Nebraska, one of Oklahoma's most dominant, most complete all-around games in recent memory. Tulane knocked off K-State in Manhattan. I was feeling very confident going into Saturday, and then lo and behold, about 10:30 Saturday night, I walked out of that stadium. We got our ass handed to us by Adrian Martinez. So now we're hitting the pause button. We've got to seriously look at what happened now that the honeymoon phase is over. And let's just dive right into it, guys. OU falls to K-State 41-34.
I remember being laughed at last week for taking K-State plus the points. That was, I think, my only win on the week. So it's sad that had to be my one victory. But, I don't know how much I believe myself that K-State would actually keep it close. I felt pretty good about it. But, guys, came out flat, never really got off the ground, kept taking shots, hung in there, I guess, for a little bit, but could never really turn the corner, even when the game, got to 14-14. Then you give off a nice kick return to K-State. I'm curious to hear how you guys felt. It sounded like the atmosphere was pretty great. Maybe have an announcer just causing false starts. Maybe that's the issue of this offense. All kinds of things we can dive into. But guys, it was like the game we've grown so familiar to watch over the past 5 years. I don't think. Correct me if I'm wrong. Did anybody believe this was a playoff team? Preseason. I'll have to go back and listen to our previous podcast, but I don't think Adam did. Outside of Adam, I'm not sure how many people really thought this team was a true playoff contender. I think the win against Nebraska was fool's gold. We talked about it last week. Nebraska is a very, 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 very bad football team right now. It made us look better than we are. We were humbled. We'll see what happens at TCU next week.
I still think there's a chance this team could make the playoffs. I mean, you look at the top three, Ohio State, Bama, Georgia. Yeah, they're pretty much the best teams out there. But then you go beyond that, and like Clemson has issues. Michigan looked really good up until this Saturday when they played Maryland, and Tyler and I both took the loss on that pick. USC struggled this weekend. So I just don't know who that fourth team is. And simply by nature of who's going to actually go up and grab that spot, OU is a contender until they're out, I think, in my opinion, and lose the second game. But I think for this game, it was really disappointing. Like you mentioned, it felt like the Lincoln Riley era. And I thought we were done with that. I thought we were done with teams coming, especially into Norman in our home stadium, where the atmosphere was incredible. The fans were juiced. The fans were ready for this game, and it was really loud in there. And then the team didn't show up behind that at all. Absolutely outplayed by K-State. And I think it was pretty frustrating, especially after the game, because there wasn't really one thing that fans could put their finger on and say, that was the reason we lost. That's the one thing we need to go solve. And so when you ask people what went wrong, as we did on our Twitter after the game, you got responses that were all over the place. But for me, I think it does come down to this defense just didn't do the right job there.
Well, and guys, I think that's what makes Saturday so frustrating for me is like I didn't see this coming, which I guess, that's me. Maybe my expectations being a little bit inflated because of the performance against Nebraska the previous week, because of how well this team has played and firing on all cylinders. But just going into this game, honoring the Selmans beforehand, the statue celebration was phenomenal. The crowd was energized. It was a fantastic atmosphere. Adam, was probably one of the best Big 12 conference game atmospheres I've seen in Norman in quite a long time, especially right there at the very beginning. But it was just kind of one of those things where K-State took the ball. They won the toss, went right down the field, scored. OU came out slow once again for the fourth consecutive week. And, lo and behold, they found themselves down 14-0. And once you get down 2 possessions to a team like Kansas State, they're licking their chops. That's how they want to play. They want to dirty things up. They want to be able to take an early lead, then be able to control the clock, make you play from behind, play their style of football. And, Oklahoma was able to claw their way back. They tied it up at 14-14. And then you give up a 50-plus yard kickoff return to Kansas State, and you lose all momentum. All the energy is sucked out of the stadium. But guys, that's 5 out of the last 11, 3 of the last 4 games Kansas State has won over Oklahoma in the past 11 seasons. So, whether it was Bill Snyder, Chris Kleiman, clearly the people up in Manhattan have figured out the secret sauce and the recipe to take on Oklahoma and play them consistently well year in and year out. But yeah, it was frustrating all the way around. Defense didn't. I felt like I was watching Alex Grinch and Mike Stoops coach defenses throughout the entire 4 quarters of that game on Saturday. Offense got off to a slow start. Yes, we'll touch on Dylan Gabriel in the offense. I honestly think I came away from that game outside of the penalties. I think we've got a pretty good offense, and we'll touch on that here in a second. But the defense, 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
So why do you think Adrian Martinez was able to be so successful at Owen Field when he was pretty bad the first 3 games for the Wildcats?
Well, I think that's probably the biggest question mark, and that's the reason why I walked out of the stadium on Saturday night so frustrated. I mean, Adrian Martinez had a combined 306 passing yards in the first 3 games, and then he comes to Owen Field and goes for over 500 total yards and looks like the Heisman Trophy front runner going into Week 5. So, missed tackles, OU being out physical on the line of scrimmage. Our front 7 was abysmal outside of Jalen Redmond. I know that Danny Stutzman had 10 tackles. I know that David Agwebu had 15 tackles, but from start to finish, we were not I guess you could say the alpha team in this matchup. We got pushed around from the first snap all the way until the final whistle blew. But like I said, the missed tackles, losing leverage, not being lined up properly, us having 3 defenders on this side of the football, whereas K-State has got 4 and 5 guys out there ready to block. So Oklahoma always falling behind the chains as well. Kansas State being able to pick up 5, 6, 7 yards on first down. When you're going to get against a Chris Kleiman-led offense that's got the playmakers in Adrian Martinez and Deuce Vaughn, if you're finding yourself in 2nd and 3, 3rd and 2, that is not a good recipe for success. I don't care how talented you are on defense. So it's just another loss, Adam, where we make the opposing team's quarterback, no matter who it is, look like the best quarterback in America on that given Saturday.
Yeah, we got some good Twitter responses. Make sure to follow us on there at the Mainline Pod, because we were asking everyone, hey, what would be one thing that you change going into the TCU game? I like this response from at Markaduck. He said, tackling instead of stripping the ball, turned a lot of mid gains into long gains on Saturday. And that was something that we hadn't seen through the first 3 weeks of the season. Like we mentioned after the UTEP game, we saw constantly one guy coming in low, the other guy coming in high, gang tackling, lots of flowing to the ball. This time we had 1, 2, 3 guys sometimes coming in trying to grab at the ball, no one trying to get the ball carrier actually down, and K-State picking up, extra yards after contact. And I think a lot of that was the secondary was often the first guys to get to the ball carrier in certain situations. That front 7 not doing their job at all there. And when the secondary comes in, those guys are not necessarily the ones that want to make tackles. They want to get those interceptions and kind of finish things off. They don't want to be the initial contact. And so the technique was flawed there, and it really, really stung on Saturday. As far as like a strategic aspect of this defense, Brent Venables runs a lot of zone coverage, and that's to be expected. And usually that is what you want to go with when you have a mobile quarterback, because you want to be able to keep your eyes focused on him when he does scramble. I kind of wonder if maybe mixing in some man coverage with a spy might have been more effective. You probably lose some defenders in that scenario that could be covering and helping with the pass. But I think you had to say, hey, Martinez, you're going to have to throw an absolute tight windows, because he was nailing everything that was between the linebackers and the safeties. How often did we see those 15, 20-yard passes that he kind of just blooped right over the linebackers, and then it was an easy pass for him? And we didn't really make him throw those really hard passes that I don't think he can, and I don't think he will for the rest of the year. And I feel like this is his best game. It's high water mark, and we're going to be kicking ourselves all year watching him lose to Texas Tech and whoever else is on the schedule for him.
I'd be curious, Adam, because QB spy sounds great in theory. I also watched him outrun David Agwebu multiple times, Deshaun White multiple times. So who is the spy that's going to be able to keep up with him? Because the only thing I could think of sitting there watching our defense last week was like, we look like Nebraska from the week before, where it's like, how slow are we? And I don't think Adrian Martinez is that fast of a guy. Clearly, like, he's got some speed to him, maybe more so than I originally thought. But he's outrunning linebackers like they're linemen. That can't happen. That seems impossible for a place like Oklahoma, for linebackers not to keep up with somewhat mobile quarterbacks. And he did it time and time again. And going back to your point, Tyler, great. We got him behind the sticks at 3rd and 16 in the game, and to break off to 55-yard run. So it was a mess. I don't necessarily think the defense was called poorly, but man, was it executed poorly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, execution. Jeff Lebby's talked about it time and time again. If you listen to Ted Roof, you listen to Brent Venables, they all want to have calls back. But at the end of the day, you've got to go out there and execute. There's only so many things that the coaches can do to help you. But when the ball is snapped, it's on you as a player to go out there and make something happen. But, Adam, you talked about the discrepancies between playing man-to-man coverage, playing zone. OU is in that 3rd and 16 with the chance to get off the field, get the ball back, which, Oklahoma had all the momentum. And I think that, a lot of fans inside that stadium that were left felt confident that if OU was able to get the ball back, they were probably going to go down there and at least have a chance to throw it into the end zone to tie the game. But running man-to-man, I was listening to, if you guys haven't had a chance to kind of go back and look at it, Keegan Renault does a really good film review, kind of a post-game breakdown, some schematics of what Oklahoma and Kansas State were doing on both sides of the football. And it was time and time again, OU was simply out-leveraged with what they were trying to do defensively, particularly in the run game, in the front seven, where, when Kansas State was in 12 personnel, where they've got Deuce Vaughn in the backfield, they've got 2 tight ends on the line of scrimmage, you would be able to, Keegan actually did this. He split the field right down the middle. OU would have 3 defenders on the left side of the football. Kansas State would have 4 to 5 blockers, 5 if you include Deuce Vaughn out there lead blocking for Adrian Martinez. So Oklahoma's failure to make those adjustments, in their scheme and the way that they line up to the football harmed this team all night. And 3rd and 16, the 55-yard run, that was just that was just a culmination of how the entire night went, giving up a run like that. So, let's talk a little bit about the offense before we kind of go into what we would do if we
hold on.
Go ahead, Adam.
Should we talk about linebacker changes here?
That's one change that I'm seriously considering. Yeah. That's my one change that I want to make. If we want to touch on that right now, we can.
Yeah, let's go ahead. Let's actually do it since we're already on the subject of defense, and we can then pair offense at the end of offense. But a defensive change, and there was an interesting quote. I don't remember. I think it was after the game. It might have been on Sunday, or I'm not sure when Brent Venables said this, but I'll paraphrase a little bit, where he essentially said, we kind of played on our heels like we were scared of mistakes. And I think there is a player that is not starting right now that is not afraid to make mistakes and can often make up for his mistakes with his athleticism. And that's Jaren Kanak. And he really didn't get, I don't know if he even got any snaps at all on defense. I don't know that I noticed him out there. Zero. Yeah. But he's certainly a guy that could play at that cheetah position or maybe take David Agwebu's position. And the speed was lacking from David Agwebu, and the TCU offense gets way faster, way faster than this K-State offense. So could he be a guy that comes in and plays on Saturday?
Guys, we're not experts by any means, but I feel like we know the game of football pretty well. And I think that my biggest thing, and this goes back to any team over the last 5 or 6 years, I want our best athletes on the field on the defensive side of the football. I don't care how good your coaching is. At the end of the day, it's the Jimmies and the Joes, not the X's and the O's when you go out there and compete on Saturdays. So point number 1 for me, Key Lawrence needs to be your starting safety. Opposite of Billy Bowman. I think it was Bob Prisbillo tweeted it out. Broyles and Key Lawrence combined for all 85 snaps against Kansas State. Broyles had 51. Key Lawrence had 34. I don't care how well you're practicing during the week. Justin Broyles, as an athlete, I know he's done tremendous things for this school as a player at the University of Oklahoma. Key Lawrence is a superior athlete. He's the bigger body. When you're going against a more physical, predominantly running team and against Kansas State, you want to have Key Lawrence out there opposed to Justin Broyles. So Justin Harrington needs to find a way to get onto the field. This is a big one for me. And guys, I'm sorry, Jaren Kanak needs to be on the field. I don't care if he's a true freshman. I don't care if he's quote unquote has no idea what he's doing right now. He is the best all-around athlete on this defense. You can just tell the guy is different when he's out there. I do whatever I had to do to get number 7 on the field, move Deshaun White to inside backer, put Kanak at the cheetah position. Cupcake season is over, guys. There's not a UTEP. There's not a Kent State. There's no longer a Nebraska that's left on the schedule. We can win every game that's left on the schedule. We could also lose every game that's on the remainder of the regular season schedule. So the Big 12 is that competitive from top to bottom. So my change, Key Lawrence and Billy Bowman are your 2 safeties. Get Jaren Kanak on the field when we trot out against TCU on Saturday.
We've talked about Justin Broyles a lot over the past, probably even before this podcast began. Why is he on the field? What is it? Tyler, I would agree with you with every point, except this is now 2 different coaching staffs that have put him on the field as the starter. Why? There has to be something that we don't know that continues to put him out there in a starting role. And if it had drastically changed from Lincoln to obviously Venables, then I'd be like, Lincoln didn't know what he was talking about. Grinch didn't know what he was talking about. But now Venables has him as the starter. So I don't know if it is an injury issue with Key.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he was on the snap count last weekend. I've heard rumors of that as well. But there's something there that clearly the 3 of us aren't smart enough to recognize for the reason Justin Broyles continues to be put out there for many, many snaps.
Well, and I think that's the biggest thing, Corbin, is what is Justin Broyles doing Monday through Friday afternoon that Key Lawrence and Justin Harrington are not doing? What is he doing in practice, in the meeting rooms, in the classroom that is allowing him to get the bulk of those snaps compared to those 2, more athletic, superiorly talented guys? I don't know because guys, now that we're into Big 12 play, some of the offenses that we're about to see, starting with this weekend, you got Quentin Johnson coming up this weekend. You got Darius Davis. You can't tell me that offensive coordinators on these opposing teams aren't going to be looking at that Oklahoma secondary, just like LSU did in 2019. Where's the weak spot? I know that you've done a lot of really, really good things. I know that this kid is a captain. He's a leader of this football team, but teams are going to continue to exploit that matchup. Xavier Worthy, Quentin Johnson, Oklahoma State's got some guys. Baylor's got some guys. Xavier Hutchinson at Iowa State. You got to be able to put some guys out there that can match what those guys are doing offensively, and I hope that changes on Saturday.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with that. Justin Harrington, another name that we haven't heard or seen very much of in the last 2 games, but certainly a faster player than Deshaun White, looks physically bigger than Deshaun White. White's played great against Nebraska, so I think he's earned some more playing time. But
he played well against Kansas State. I think Deshaun White played well against Kansas State.
Yeah, I would just like to see more overall speed on this defense because I think that can make up for some of the errors that happened on Saturday. And Kanik, he's so athletic. He's so fast that like he'll make mistakes. And like there's a key example of this. I don't remember which game it was where he rushed in, got chop blocked, essentially fell on the ground, and then popped right back up and sacked the quarterback. Like that's how good he is. It's like he probably could have rushed differently and avoided that block and just got the sack anyway, but he was so good he could make up for his own mistakes. So I agree with that change. Now on the
so I'm clear, Adam, you're asking for Speed D. Am I understanding that correctly?
With the interesting looking logo, I would like the Speed D back. USC having a ton of success on defense that doesn't seem sustainable with all those turnovers. I just wonder like where was that when we were in Norman? Because the players are not markedly better. If anything,
are they better athletes?
Maybe it just works in the Pac-12.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the same competition. Yeah, offensively, I thought offense was pretty good. I don't think offense was the reason we lost, but Corbin, I think you probably still have some strong thoughts that carry over from last week's discussion.
I do. It's
I'm
the
ready
elite
for this.
throw. It's the elite throws, guys. It really is because you can look back and you say, great, offense scored enough to win this game. Defense was the letdown. That's fine. But in today's college football, you're going to have games that turn into a shootout. You're going to. That's just part of it. Even going back to Clemson and Alabama, when they had the rivalry of playing back and forth for national championships, those games got into the 30s, 40s, and beyond. So you're going to have games where it's going to be on Dylan's shoulders to go win you some. And when you miss throws like you did it with Drake Stoops, he's wide open and you miss him by 5 to 10 yards. There's a window there late in the game where Mims is near the sideline. There's a window there to make that throw and he overthrows him. There are some throws there and part of this I want to take with a grain of salt because you can't compare Dylan to what we had with Kyler and Baker. He's not a number 1 overall pick. Those are twice in a generation player. But man, there's opportunities there for this game to still be won, regardless of the flags, how much the defense gave up, all of that in between. If he can make a few of these really big throws that we need him to make. On paper, great game. If you didn't watch it, you're like, Gabriel wasn't the problem. And I don't think he's the reason for the loss, but when you need a quarterback to step up and make some big-time throws, especially to guys that are wide open, you got to make them. And he didn't make them on Saturday.
Dylan Gabriel was 26 of 39 for 330 passing yards, 4 touchdowns. He also had 66 yards rushing on the ground. Dylan Gabriel is not the reason Oklahoma lost this football game on Saturday night. Far from it. You don't lead an offense to over 550 total yards, 0 turnovers, 34 points, and point the finger at the quarterback. This one is on the defense. I think we're all pretty clear on that. But I do want to make this point, and this kind of echoes what you've been talking about, Corbin, for the last few weeks. We've been hearing since UTEP that Dylan Gabriel, well, he's not Baker Mayfield. He's not Kyler. He's not Jalen Hurts. We know that. He's still a really, really good quarterback, and he's played well enough for this team to be 4-0. But just because he isn't those 3 previous guys doesn't mean he shouldn't be held to the same standard as every quarterback that's played at the University of Oklahoma for the last 20 years. So quarterbacks know that when they sign on the dotted line underneath the interlocking O and U, it's one thing to miss a throw over the middle when you're trying to fit it into a tight window. That's football. That's going to happen. But you can't miss that pass to Drake Stoops. That's probably the best route that Drake Stoops has ever ran in his life. You go back on the All-22, you watch that over and over again, that's probably going to be saved and showed to high school kids on how to run routes. It was that good. You can't miss Drake Stoops on that. You can't miss Marvin Mims late in the game where he's sitting in the perfect zone. I think KState was in cover 2. He was sitting in that perfect zone in between the corner and the safety. And then the biggest one for me, the 4th and 4, Drake Stoops runs a simple out route and Dylan Gabriel can't put it on him. It was an inaccurate throw out wide. We all know we all know this. Dylan knows this. Dylan's going to keep getting better. I believe that. And this team's going to keep getting better. But, even though he's not the Heisman Trophy quarterback, like what we've seen over the last 5 years, he's still good enough to make those throws. And we'll see, I think, as time goes on, he'll get better and he'll get a little bit more consistent with that.
I think the perfect way to put it is Dylan Gabriel did not lose this game, but he missed the opportunity to win it.